This video contains audio content only. There are no visual elements or images accompanying the audio. If you're expecting to see video footage, please note that this is an intentional audio-only presentation. We recommend listening to this content rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the audio. Welcome, curious minds and lovers of cultural exploration. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating yet often overlooked chapter of history, the story of the Doukhobors. This tale of spiritual rebels, pacifists, and communal living enthusiasts is sure to captivate your imagination and challenge your perceptions of religion, society, and cultural identity. The Doukhobors, whose name translates to spirit wrestlers, emerged in 18th century Russia as a group that dared to question the orthodoxy of their time. Their journey from persecution in their homeland to building new lives in Canada is a testament to human resilience, the power of conviction, and the complexities of maintaining cultural traditions in a rapidly changing world. As we embark on this audio journey, prepare to be transported to the rolling steppes of Imperial Russia, the windswept prairies of Saskatchewan, and the lush valleys of British Columbia. We'll explore the Doukhobors' unique beliefs, their tumultuous history, and the lasting impact they've had on the cultural tapestry of North America. From their rejection of religious icons to their commitment to pacifism, from their experiments in communal living to their struggles with assimilation, the Doukhobors' story touches on themes that resonate deeply with our modern world: religious freedom, cultural preservation, and the search for identity in a globalized society. So, whether you're a history buff, a cultural enthusiast, or simply someone who loves a good story, settle in and open your mind. The tale of the Doukhobors is one of courage, controversy, and above all, the enduring human spirit. Let's begin our exploration of this remarkable group and the indelible mark they've left on history. 1. The birth of a movement. Doukhobor origins and beliefs. Picture this. It's the late 17th century in Russia. The air is thick with incense from Orthodox churches, and the sound of liturgical chants echoes through the streets. But in the hearts and minds of some, a rebellion is brewing, not against the Tsar, but against the very fabric of religious orthodoxy itself. This is where our story begins, with the emergence of the Doukhobors. These weren't your typical dissidents. No, the Doukhobors were spiritual revolutionaries who dared to challenge the most fundamental aspects of the Russian Orthodox Church. Imagine the audacity it took in those times to declare that God dwells not in churches made of stone and wood, but within each human being. The Doukhobors did just that. They rejected the idea that priests, icons, or even the Bible itself were necessary intermediaries between humans and the divine. Instead, they believed in a direct, personal connection with God. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Doukhobors didn't just talk the talk, they walked the walk. They developed a unique oral tradition, passing down their beliefs through psalms and hymns rather than relying on written scripture. Picture a group of people gathered in a simple room, their voices rising in harmony as they sing their sacred songs. This was a Doukhobor prayer meeting, or muleni. Now, you might be wondering, where did they get their name? Well, it's a fascinating bit of linguistic history. The term Doukhobor was actually coined by an Orthodox archbishop in 1785. And it wasn't meant as a compliment. He called them Doukhobor tsi, meaning spirit wrestlers, implying they were wrestling against the Holy Spirit. But in a classic case of turning an insult into a badge of honor, the Doukhobors embraced the name, interpreting it to mean they were wrestling with and for the Spirit of God. But the Doukhobors' beliefs went far beyond just spiritual matters. They developed a comprehensive life philosophy that was radical for its time, and in many ways, still is today. They were pacifists who rejected violence in all its forms. They were vegetarians long before it was trendy. They believed in the equality of all people, including women, at a time when such ideas were considered dangerously revolutionary. One of their most intriguing practices was their approach to leadership. While they did have leaders, these weren't your typical authority figures. The Doukhobors believed that their leaders were specially inspired by God, almost like living prophets. But here's the kicker. They also believed that all people were equal because everyone had God within them. It was a fascinating balance between respecting spiritual authority and maintaining individual autonomy. The Doukhobors' commitment to their beliefs was nothing short of extraordinary. In 1895, in an act of defiance that still resonates today, they gathered their weapons and burned them in a massive bonfire. This burning of arms was not just a symbolic gesture. It was a declaration of their pacifist principles and a direct challenge to the militaristic policies of Tsar Nicholas II. Now, you might be thinking, surely such radical ideas didn't go over well in Imperial Russia. And you'd be right. The Doukhobors faced intense persecution. They were exiled to the fringes of the empire, first to the Crimea, then to the harsh Caucasus region. But even in exile, they managed to build thriving communities, their industriousness and communal spirit allowing them to prosper against the odds. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, this is where it gets even more interesting. The Doukhobors' plight caught the attention of none other than Leo Tolstoy, the renowned Russian novelist. Tolstoy, who had undergone his own spiritual transformation, saw in the Doukhobors a living example of his ideals of non-violence and simple living. Tolstoy's support was more than just moral. He personally financed the Doukhobors' mass emigration to Canada in 1899, even donating the royalties from his novel, Resurrection, to the cause. Can you imagine? One of the world's most famous authors, using his wealth and influence to help a persecuted religious minority find a new home halfway across the world. The Doukhobors' journey to Canada was epic in every sense of the word. Picture this. Over 7,500 people, leaving behind everything they knew, boarding ships for a months-long voyage to a land they'd never seen. It was the largest single mass migration in Canadian history. But why Canada? Well, the Canadian government, eager to populate its vast western territories, had offered the Doukhobors land and, crucially, exemption from military service. It seemed like the perfect solution, a chance for the Doukhobors to practice their faith freely and build the communal society they dreamed of. As we'll see in the next part of our story, however, the reality of life in Canada would prove to be far more complex than anyone could have anticipated. The Doukhobors were about to embark on a new chapter of their journey, one that would test their beliefs, challenge their unity, and leave an indelible mark on Canadian history. 2. A new promised land. Doukhobors in Canada. Imagine stepping off a ship onto the shores of a new continent, your pockets empty but your heart full of hope and your mind brimming with visions of a better life. This was the reality for thousands of Doukhobors as they arrived in Canada at the turn of the 20th century. But as they were about to discover, the path to their promised land would be far from smooth. The Canadian prairies that greeted the Doukhobors were a far cry from the lush landscapes of their Russian homeland. Picture vast, windswept expanses of grassland, dotted with the occasional cluster of trees. The climate was harsh, with bitterly cold winters and scorching summers. For a people used to the more moderate climate of the Caucasus, this new environment was a shock to the system. But the Doukhobors were nothing if not resourceful. In those early days, faced with the urgent need for shelter before the brutal prairie winter set in, they came up with an ingenious solution: the dugout house. Picture this. A home literally dug into the side of a hill or ravine, with walls of logs and a roof of sod. It wasn't pretty, but it was practical, providing much-needed insulation against the elements. One such dugout house, built in 1899 near what is now Blaine Lake, Saskatchewan, has survived to this day and is now a National Historic Site of Canada. Can you imagine the stories those walls could tell if they could speak? The hopes, fears, and dreams of those first Doukhobor settlers, huddled together in their earthen shelter, facing an uncertain future in a strange land. But the Doukhobors didn't just survive, they thrived. Within a remarkably short time, they had established dozens of villages across the prairies of what is now Saskatchewan. These weren't just any villages, mind you. True to their communal principles, the Doukhobors pooled their resources and labor, working together to build homes, barns, and communal facilities. The heart of each village was the large communal house, or dom, a two-story structure that could house multiple families. Picture a bustling hive of activity, women cooking and weaving in the communal kitchen on the ground floor, children playing in the yard, men working in the fields or crafting tools and furniture. It was a scene of industry and cooperation that impressed even their skeptical neighbors. Speaking of neighbors, the arrival of the Doukhobors caused quite a stir in the established communities of Western Canada. Imagine the culture shock on both sides. Here were these strange Russians, with their odd beliefs and communal lifestyle, suddenly appearing in the midst of British and French Canadian settlers. The Doukhobors' habit of having women work in the fields alongside men, their vegetarian diet, their pacifist beliefs. All of these set them apart and sometimes led to misunderstandings and tensions. But it wasn't just cultural differences that caused friction. The Doukhobors' refusal to swear an oath of allegiance to the British crown, which they saw as contrary to their religious beliefs, and their reluctance to register births, marriages, and land titles put them at odds with Canadian authorities. The government, which had initially welcomed the Doukhobors with open arms, began to grow impatient with what they saw as the group's failure to assimilate. The tensions came to a head in 1906 when the Canadian government, under pressure from other settlers who resented the special treatment given to the Doukhobors, revoked their exemption from individual land ownership requirements. This was a devastating blow to the Doukhobors, who saw communal land ownership as a fundamental part of their way of life. In response, a charismatic leader emerged, Peter Verhagen, known to his followers as Lordly. Verhagen, who had been exiled in Siberia during the initial migration, arrived in Canada in 1902 and quickly took charge of the community. Under his leadership, the majority of Doukhobors made a dramatic decision. They would abandon their homesteads in Saskatchewan and start anew in British Columbia. Picture the scene. Thousands of people, packing up their belongings, leaving behind the farms they had worked so hard to establish, all in the name of preserving their way of life. It was one of the largest internal migrations in Canadian history, a testament to the Doukhobors' commitment to their principles. In British Columbia, Verhagen led the community in purchasing large tracts of land in the Kootenay and Boundary regions. Here, they established new villages and set up an impressive array of cooperative enterprises, sawmills, brick factories, jam factories, and more. The crown jewel of their efforts was the Christian Community of Universal Brotherhood, CCUB, which by the 1920s had become the largest communal organization in North America. But even as they built their new Eden in the mountains of British Columbia, cracks were beginning to appear in the Doukhobor community. Some members, known as independents, chose to stay behind in Saskatchewan and assimilate into Canadian society. Others, frustrated with what they saw as a betrayal of Doukhobor principles, formed a radical splinter group known as the Sons of Freedom. The Sons of Freedom took the Doukhobor rejection of materialism to extreme lengths. They engaged in public nudity, seeing clothes as a symbol of worldly attachment, and, most controversially, arson attacks on both government property and the property of other Doukhobors they saw as too worldly. Picture the shock and outrage of mainstream Canadian society. Nude protests in the streets, schools and public buildings going up in flames. It was a far cry from the peaceful, industrious image the Doukhobors had initially presented. These actions, while undertaken by only a small minority of Doukhobors, had a profound impact on public perception of the group as a whole. The media sensationalized the Sons of Freedom's activities, and soon the word Doukhobor became synonymous in many Canadians' minds with fanaticism and disorder. Meanwhile, the Great Depression hit the Doukhobor communities hard. The CCUB, burdened by debt and mismanagement, collapsed in 1938. Many Doukhobors lost everything they had worked so hard to build. It was a crushing blow to their dreams of a self-sufficient communal society. But even in the face of these setbacks, the core of Doukhobor culture and belief persisted. They continued to hold on to their pacifist principles, their commitment to communal values, and their unique spiritual practices. In the decades that followed, the Doukhobors would face new challenges and opportunities as they navigated their place in an increasingly modern and diverse Canada. As we move into the next part of our story, we'll explore how the Doukhobors adapted to these changes, the lasting impact they've had on Canadian society, and the efforts to preserve their unique cultural heritage in the face of assimilation and modernization. The Doukhobor journey, as we'll see, is far from over. 3. Cultural preservation in a modern world. Doukhobor heritage today. Fast forward to the present day. The bucolic villages and communal farms of the early Doukhobor settlers are now largely a thing of the past. But don't be fooled, the Doukhobor spirit is far from extinct. In fact, it's evolving and adapting in fascinating ways to the challenges of the 21st century. Today, there are approximately 30,000 people of Doukhobor descent in Canada, with the largest concentrations in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. But here's the kicker. Only about a third of these individuals actively participate in Doukhobor cultural practices. It's a stark reminder of the challenges faced by minority cultures in maintaining their traditions in the face of assimilation and modernization. But those who do keep the faith are doing so with remarkable vigor and creativity. Take, for example, the Doukhobor choirs. These aren't your average church choirs, mind you. Doukhobor choral music is a unique tradition, featuring complex harmonies and lyrics that encapsulate their spiritual teachings. Imagine walking into a community hall and hearing the rich, soul-stirring sounds of a Doukhobor choir. It's an experience that has moved many to tears and attracted interest from music lovers far beyond the Doukhobor community. In recent years, there's been a renewed interest among younger Doukhobors in reconnecting with their heritage. Some are learning Russian, the traditional language of their ancestors. Others are delving into the art of traditional Doukhobor cuisine. And let me tell you, Doukhobor cooking is something special. Take, for instance, the famous Doukhobor borscht. Now, if you're picturing the bright red, beet-heavy soup that's common in Eastern Europe, think again. Doukhobor borscht is a creamy, orange-hued concoction that's more like a vegetable chowder. It's so beloved that it's become a staple in many restaurants in the Kootenay region of British Columbia, even among non-Doukhobors. But it's not just about preserving the past. Modern Doukhobors are finding new ways to express their values in the contemporary world. Many are active in peace movements, environmental causes, and social justice initiatives. It's a natural extension of their traditional beliefs in pacifism and community service. One particularly intriguing development is the way some Doukhobors are using modern technology to keep their culture alive. There are now websites dedicated to Doukhobor genealogy, online forums where people share stories and recipes, and even YouTube channels featuring Doukhobor music and cultural events. It's a fascinating blend of old and new, tradition and innovation. But the path of cultural preservation is not without its challenges and controversies. Take, for example, the issue of the Doukhobor Discovery Centre in Castlegar, British Columbia. This museum, which showcases Doukhobor history and culture, has become a focal point for debates about how Doukhobor heritage should be presented and who has the right to tell the Doukhobor story. Some argue that the museum doesn't go far enough in addressing the more controversial aspects of Doukhobor history, such as the activities of the Sons of Freedom. Others feel that too much emphasis on these sensational elements overshadows the broader Doukhobor story of pacifism, communal living, and spiritual devotion. And then there's the thorny issue of reconciliation. The actions of the Sons of Freedom, particularly their arson campaigns, left deep scars on both the broader Canadian society and within the Doukhobor community itself. While many modern Doukhobors are working to heal these wounds and build bridges with their neighbors, the legacy of those turbulent times still casts a long shadow. Perhaps one of the most poignant examples of this ongoing process of reconciliation is the story of the New Denver survivors. In the 1950s, in response to the Sons of Freedom protests, the British Columbia government forcibly removed children from Doukhobor families and placed them in a residential school in New Denver. The trauma of this separation has echoed through generations of Doukhobor families. In recent years, these survivors have sought recognition and compensation for their experiences. While their legal battles have been largely unsuccessful, their story has raised important questions about religious freedom, cultural rights, and the responsibilities of the state. It's a stark reminder of the complexities and sometimes painful realities of cultural preservation in a diverse society. Despite these challenges, the Doukhobor community continues to find ways to celebrate and share their unique heritage. Annual events like the Doukhobor Peace Day in Grand Forks, British Columbia, bring together Doukhobors and non-Doukhobors alike in a celebration of peace, community, and cultural diversity. One particularly heartening development is the growing interest in Doukhobor history and culture among academics and cultural preservationists. Universities in Western Canada now offer courses on Doukhobor history, and there are ongoing efforts to digitize and preserve Doukhobor archival materials. But perhaps the most inspiring examples of cultural preservation come from individual Doukhobors who are finding creative ways to honor their heritage while embracing modern life. Take, for instance, the story of a young Doukhobor woman who recently made headlines for combining traditional Doukhobor a cappella singing with electronic dance music. It's a bold fusion that's introducing Doukhobor music to a whole new audience. Or consider the Doukhobor gardeners who are applying their community's traditional agricultural knowledge to modern organic farming techniques. These individuals are not only preserving valuable cultural practices but also contributing to broader conversations about sustainable agriculture and food security. The story of the Doukhobors in the 21st century is, in many ways, a microcosm of the challenges and opportunities faced by minority cultures around the world. How does a community maintain its unique identity while also participating fully in the broader society? How can traditional values be translated into meaningful action in the modern world? These are questions that the Doukhobors continue to grapple with, and their experiences offer valuable insights for other cultural groups facing similar challenges. As we look to the future, the fate of Doukhobor culture remains uncertain. Will it continue to evolve and adapt, finding new relevance in each generation? Or will it gradually fade away, becoming little more than a footnote in Canadian history? The answer, of course, lies with the Doukhobors themselves, particularly the younger generation. It's up to them to decide which aspects of their heritage they want to carry forward and how they want to interpret and express their cultural identity in the years to come. One thing is clear, though: the legacy of the Doukhobors, with their emphasis on peace, community, and spiritual seeking, has much to offer our often fractured and conflict-ridden world. Whether through their music, their cuisine, their agricultural practices, or their philosophical teachings, the Doukhobors continue to make a unique contribution to the cultural mosaic of Canada and beyond. 4. The Doukhobor influence, from pacifism to sustainable living. Now, let's delve into the profound influence the Doukhobors have had on Canadian society and beyond. Their impact stretches far beyond their own communities, touching on issues that are more relevant today than ever before. Let's start with their commitment to pacifism. The Doukhobors' steadfast refusal to bear arms or participate in military service was revolutionary in its time and continues to inspire peace activists today. During both World Wars, Doukhobors faced significant persecution for their pacifist stance. Many were imprisoned or forced to perform alternative service in work camps. But here's where it gets really interesting: their pacifism wasn't just about refusing to fight. The Doukhobors developed a comprehensive philosophy of non-violence that extended to all aspects of life. They were vegetarians long before it was fashionable, believing that violence against animals was just as wrong as violence against humans. This holistic approach to non-violence has had a lasting impact on the peace movement in Canada and around the world. During the Vietnam War, for instance, many conscientious objectors in the United States looked to the Doukhobor example for inspiration and guidance. But the Doukhobor influence goes beyond pacifism. Their early experiments in communal living and cooperative economics were truly groundbreaking. At its peak in the 1920s, the Christian Community of Universal Brotherhood, CCUB, was running sawmills, brick factories, jam factories, and large-scale agricultural operations. It was a remarkable example of a self-sufficient, cooperative economy in action. While the CCUB ultimately collapsed during the Great Depression, its legacy lives on in various forms of cooperative enterprises across Canada. The principles of mutual aid and community self-reliance that the Doukhobors espoused are finding new relevance in today's discussions about sustainable economics and resilient communities. Speaking of sustainability, the Doukhobors were eco-warriors long before the term was coined. Their traditional agricultural practices, emphasizing organic methods and crop diversity, are now being studied by a new generation of farmers interested in sustainable agriculture. In the Kootenay region of British Columbia, where many Doukhobors settled, you can still find orchards planted by Doukhobor settlers over a century ago. These heritage fruit trees, many of them rare or unusual varieties, are now being preserved and studied for their genetic diversity and resilience to climate change. The Doukhobor approach to land stewardship, rooted in their belief in the sanctity of all life, offers valuable lessons for our current environmental challenges. Their motto, "Toil and Peaceful Life," encapsulates an ethic of simple living and harmonious coexistence with nature that resonates strongly with modern environmental movements. But perhaps one of the most significant, yet often overlooked, influences of the Doukhobors has been in the realm of civil liberties and religious freedom in Canada. The conflicts between the Doukhobors and the Canadian government over issues like oath-taking, military service, and education forced Canadian society to grapple with fundamental questions about the limits of religious freedom and the rights of minority groups. The Doukhobor experience played a crucial role in shaping Canada's approach to multiculturalism and religious accommodation. The challenges and controversies surrounding the Doukhobors pushed Canadian law and society to become more flexible and inclusive in dealing with diverse cultural and religious practices. For instance, the Doukhobors' refusal to swear oaths led to changes in Canadian law that now allow for affirmations instead of oaths in legal proceedings. This change benefits not just Doukhobors, but anyone whose religious or personal beliefs preclude oath-taking. The Doukhobor influence can also be seen in Canada's approach to conscientious objection. The recognition of pacifism as a legitimate grounds for exemption from military service, which was hard-won by the Doukhobors, paved the way for broader acceptance of conscientious objection in Canadian law. Even in areas where the Doukhobors clashed most dramatically with mainstream Canadian society, their influence can be felt. Take, for example, the issue of public nudity. The nude protests of the Sons of Freedom Doukhobors, while shocking at the time, contributed to broader discussions about freedom of expression and the limits of public decency laws. In the realm of education, the Doukhobor experience has had a lasting impact. The conflicts over compulsory education in the early 20th century, and later the traumatic episode of the New Denver Residential School, have informed ongoing debates about the rights of parents to direct their children's education and the limits of state intervention in family life. Today, the principle of reasonable accommodation for religious and cultural minorities in Canadian schools owes much to the precedents set in dealing with Doukhobor communities. The Doukhobor influence extends even to the realm of diet and nutrition. Their traditional cuisine, with its emphasis on whole grains, vegetables, and dairy products, is now recognized as remarkably healthy and sustainable. Doukhobor recipes, particularly their famous borscht, have become part of the culinary landscape in Western Canada, appreciated far beyond the Doukhobor community itself. In the arts, too, the Doukhobors have left their mark. Their distinctive choral music, with its complex harmonies and spiritual themes, has gained recognition as a unique form of Canadian folk music. Doukhobor choirs have performed at national and international events, sharing their cultural heritage with diverse audiences. Doukhobor textile arts, particularly their traditional weaving and embroidery, have also gained appreciation in the wider art world. These crafts, once primarily functional, are now recognized as important forms of cultural expression and are preserved in museums across Canada. Even in literature, the Doukhobor experience has inspired writers both within and outside the community. From memoirs and historical accounts to novels and poetry, the dramatic story of the Doukhobors has provided rich material for Canadian literature. As we reflect on the multifaceted influence of the Doukhobors, it becomes clear that their impact on Canadian society goes far beyond the boundaries of their own communities. Their struggles and triumphs have played a crucial role in shaping Canada's approach to diversity, religious freedom, and cultural accommodation. Moreover, many of the principles and practices that the Doukhobors championed, pacifism, sustainable living, cooperative economics, and spiritual seeking, are finding new relevance in the 21st century. As we grapple with global challenges like climate change, economic inequality, and social conflict, the Doukhobor example offers valuable insights and inspiration. The story of the Doukhobors is, in many ways, a quintessentially Canadian story, one of immigration, cultural preservation, conflict, and ultimately, adaptation and contribution to the broader society. It's a testament to the complex, often messy, but ultimately enriching process of building a diverse and inclusive nation. As we move forward, the legacy of the Doukhobors continues to evolve and find new expressions. Whether through their ongoing peace activism, their contributions to sustainable agriculture, or their efforts to preserve and share their unique cultural heritage, the Doukhobors continue to make their mark on Canadian society and beyond. 5. Doukhobor spirituality, a unique blend of Christianity and mysticism. Now, let's delve into one of the most fascinating aspects of Doukhobor culture, their unique spiritual beliefs and practices. The Doukhobor faith is a remarkable blend of Christian principles, mystical experiences, and practical ethics that sets it apart from mainstream Christianity and offers intriguing parallels to other spiritual traditions. At the core of Doukhobor spirituality is the belief that the divine spark resides within each individual. They reject the need for priests, churches, or religious icons, believing instead in a direct, personal connection with the divine. It's a radical concept that was revolutionary in 18th century Russia and continues to challenge conventional religious thinking today. Imagine attending a Doukhobor prayer meeting, or molenie. There are no ornate altars, no religious symbols, no priests in elaborate vestments. Instead, you'd find a simple room with a table at the center, bearing only bread, salt, and water, symbols of the essentials of life. The congregation gathers in a circle, symbolizing their equality before God. The service itself is unlike any conventional Christian worship. There's no sermon, no reading from Scripture. Instead, the heart of the service is the singing of psalms and hymns, passed down orally through generations. These songs, known as the Living Book, encapsulate Doukhobor spiritual teachings and moral precepts. The singing is something truly special. Doukhobor choral music is renowned for its haunting beauty and complex harmonies. Imagine a room filled with voices raised in song, the melodies weaving together in intricate patterns. It's a deeply moving experience that many describe as transcendent. But Doukhobor spirituality goes beyond these communal gatherings. They believe in the concept of conscious, or living, Christianity, the idea that true faith is expressed not through rituals or dogma, but through one's actions in daily life. This leads to a strong emphasis on ethical behavior and social responsibility. One of the most striking aspects of Doukhobor spirituality is their pacifism. This isn't just a philosophical stance, it's a deeply held spiritual conviction. Doukhobors believe that all life is sacred and interconnected, and that violence against any living being is a violation of divine law. This belief has led Doukhobors to make significant sacrifices for their pacifist principles. During times of war, many faced imprisonment or persecution rather than take up arms. Even today, Doukhobors are often at the forefront of peace activism and conflict resolution efforts. The Doukhobor commitment to non-violence extends to their diet as well. Most Doukhobors are vegetarians, seeing the consumption of meat as a form of violence. This wasn't just a personal choice. In the early Doukhobor communities, vegetarianism was a communal practice that set them apart from their neighbors and reinforced their spiritual values. Another fascinating aspect of Doukhobor spirituality is their relationship with nature. They see the natural world as a manifestation of divine creativity and believe in the importance of living in harmony with the environment. This eco-spiritual outlook, which was ahead of its time, now resonates strongly with modern environmental movements. But perhaps one of the most intriguing elements of Doukhobor spirituality is their concept of leadership. While they've had charismatic leaders throughout their history, Doukhobors believe in the spiritual equality of all individuals. Leaders are seen not as intermediaries between God and the people, but as individuals who have a special gift for articulating and exemplifying Doukhobor values. This has led to some fascinating dynamics within Doukhobor communities. On one hand, there's a strong emphasis on individual spiritual autonomy. Each person is encouraged to seek their own understanding of divine truth. On the other hand, there's a powerful sense of community and collective spiritual seeking. One of the most controversial aspects of Doukhobor spirituality has been the practice of embodying spiritual truths through dramatic actions. The most extreme example of this was the practice of nude protests by the Sons of Freedom subgroup. While shocking to outsiders, these actions were seen by their practitioners as a way of demonstrating their rejection of materialism and their commitment to spiritual truth. It's important to note that these extreme practices were limited to a small subset of Doukhobors and were controversial even within the broader Doukhobor community. However, they do highlight the intense spiritual fervor and willingness to challenge societal norms that has characterized Doukhobor faith at various points in its history. In recent years, there's been a growing interest in Doukhobor spirituality beyond the Doukhobor community itself. Some see parallels between Doukhobor beliefs and various New Age spiritualities, particularly in their emphasis on individual spiritual experience and the divine within. Others are drawn to the Doukhobor synthesis of mystical spirituality and practical ethics. In a world grappling with environmental crises and social conflicts, the Doukhobor example of faith expressed through peaceful living and environmental stewardship offers an appealing alternative to more conventional religious approaches. Doukhobor spirituality has also attracted interest from scholars of religion and anthropologists. The Doukhobor experience offers a fascinating case study in how a spiritual movement can evolve and adapt over time, maintaining its core principles while engaging with changing social and cultural contexts. One particularly interesting area of study has been the role of women in Doukhobor spirituality. While Doukhobor communities have traditionally been patriarchal in structure, their spiritual teachings emphasize the equality of all souls before God. This has led to ongoing negotiations and reinterpretations of gender roles within Doukhobor communities. As we look to the future, the question of how Doukhobor spirituality will evolve remains open. Like many religious traditions, Doukhobor communities are grappling with the challenges of modernity and secularization. How can their unique spiritual heritage be preserved and transmitted to new generations in an increasingly secular world? Some younger Doukhobors are finding innovative ways to engage with their spiritual heritage. There are Doukhobor meditation groups that blend traditional practices with modern mindfulness techniques. Others are exploring how Doukhobor spiritual principles can be applied to contemporary issues like climate change and social justice. At the same time, there's a growing recognition of the value of preserving Doukhobor spiritual traditions as part of Canada's cultural heritage. Efforts are underway to record and preserve Doukhobor psalms and hymns, ensuring that this unique musical and spiritual tradition is not lost. The story of Doukhobor spirituality is far from over. As it continues to evolve and engage with the modern world, it offers a powerful example of how ancient wisdom can find new relevance in addressing contemporary challenges. Whether through their commitment to peace, their eco-spiritual outlook, or their emphasis on living faith through action, the Doukhobors continue to offer a unique and valuable perspective on the spiritual life. As we conclude our exploration of Doukhobor culture, history, and spirituality, it's clear that this remarkable community has much to teach us. Their journey from persecuted minority to influential subculture within Canadian society is a testament to the power of conviction, the challenges of cultural preservation, and the ongoing process of negotiating identity in a diverse world. The Doukhobor story touches on themes that resonate deeply in our current global context: religious freedom, cultural diversity, environmental stewardship, and the search for meaningful spirituality in a rapidly changing world. As we face the challenges of the 21st century, the Doukhobor example offers valuable insights and inspiration. Whether through their music, their cuisine, their spiritual practices, or their commitment to peace and sustainability, the Doukhobors have left an indelible mark on Canadian culture and continue to contribute to the rich tapestry of global spiritual and cultural diversity. As we reflect on the Doukhobor journey, from the steppes of Russia to the valleys of British Columbia, we're reminded of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of deeply held beliefs. The Doukhobor story is not just a tale of a specific religious group, but a microcosm of the immigrant experience, the struggle for religious freedom, and the ongoing negotiation between tradition and modernity that characterizes so much of contemporary life. Their history teaches us about the complexities of cultural preservation in a diverse society. The challenges faced by the Doukhobors, from outright persecution to more subtle pressures of assimilation, are mirrored in the experiences of many minority groups around the world. Their successes and struggles offer valuable lessons for how societies can embrace diversity while fostering a sense of shared community. The Doukhobor emphasis on pacifism and non-violence continues to be relevant in our conflict-ridden world. Their unwavering commitment to peace, even in the face of persecution, serves as a powerful example of the potential for nonviolent resistance and conflict resolution. As we grapple with global conflicts and the threat of violence, the Doukhobor philosophy offers an alternative path worth considering. In the realm of spirituality, the Doukhobor approach offers a fascinating blend of Christian principles, mystical experiences, and practical ethics. Their rejection of religious hierarchies and emphasis on direct spiritual experience resonates with many contemporary spiritual seekers. The Doukhobor belief in the divine spark within each individual challenges us to reconsider our understanding of spirituality and our relationship with the divine. The Doukhobor commitment to environmental stewardship, rooted in their spiritual beliefs, offers valuable insights for our current ecological crisis. Their traditional practices of sustainable agriculture and simple living demonstrate that it's possible to live in harmony with nature while maintaining a rich cultural and spiritual life. As we face the challenges of climate change and environmental degradation, the Doukhobor example offers both practical wisdom and spiritual inspiration. In the realm of community organization, the Doukhobor experiments in communal living and cooperative economics provide interesting models for alternative social structures. While their large-scale communal enterprises ultimately faltered, the principles of mutual aid and community self-reliance that underpinned these efforts remain relevant. In an era of growing economic inequality and social fragmentation, the Doukhobor emphasis on community and cooperation offers food for thought. The preservation and evolution of Doukhobor culture in the face of modernization and assimilation pressures is a testament to the community's resilience and adaptability. The efforts of modern Doukhobors to maintain their traditions while engaging with contemporary society offer valuable insights into how cultural heritage can be preserved and made relevant in a rapidly changing world. As we look to the future, the fate of Doukhobor culture remains an open question. Will their unique traditions continue to evolve and find new expressions? Or will they gradually fade into the background of Canadian multiculturalism? The answer likely lies with the younger generations of Doukhobors and their ability to find meaning and relevance in their heritage. Whatever the future holds, it's clear that the Doukhobor contribution to Canadian society and global culture is significant and enduring. From their distinctive choral music to their delicious cuisine, from their pacifist principles to their sustainable living practices, the Doukhobors have enriched our collective cultural heritage in countless ways. Perhaps most importantly, the Doukhobor story reminds us of the power of conviction and the importance of standing up for one's beliefs, even in the face of adversity. Their journey from persecuted minority to respected contributors to Canadian society is a powerful testament to the potential for positive change and the value of cultural diversity. As we conclude our exploration of Doukhobor culture and history, we're left with a deeper appreciation for the complexities of cultural identity and the ongoing process of negotiating tradition and change. The Doukhobor experience offers valuable lessons for how we can build more inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable societies while honoring the diverse cultural and spiritual traditions that enrich our world. In the end, the story of the Doukhobors is more than just a chapter in Canadian history or a footnote in the annals of religious movements. It's a vivid illustration of the human capacity for resilience, adaptation, and spiritual seeking. It challenges us to think deeply about our own beliefs, our relationship with nature and community, and our role in creating a more peaceful and sustainable world. As we face the challenges of the 21st century, from environmental crises to social conflicts, the Doukhobor example offers us not just historical interest, but practical wisdom and spiritual inspiration. Their journey reminds us that even small communities, driven by deep convictions and a willingness to live their beliefs, can have a profound and lasting impact on the world around them. So, the next time you hear a Doukhobor choir, taste a bowl of Doukhobor borscht, or come across a mention of this unique community in your travels, take a moment to reflect on the rich history and enduring legacy of the spirit wrestlers. Their story is not just a tale of the past, but a living tradition that continues to evolve and contribute to our shared human experience. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the fascinating world of Doukhobor culture and history. I hope this exploration has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to learn more about the diverse cultural traditions that shape our world. Remember, in the spirit of the Doukhobors, that each of us has the power to make a positive difference in our communities and in the world at large. Until next time, may you find inspiration in the stories of those who have dared to live their beliefs and challenge the status quo. Peace be with you all.